Welcome to Behind the Muscle Podcast. Today's guest is a CPA classic physique athlete. Today's guest is Dylan Bursey. Dylan, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So you are 16 days out from North Americans. So I'm really excited to kind of get into all of that, how prep's gone for you, Dylan, up to this point. But before we get there, I would like to know, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Yeah. So for me, honestly, it's going to sound a little cliche. Ronny is the one who kind of got me into everything. Yeah, just at that age when I was in high school, like that was kind of the guy that was all over YouTube, all over the internet. It was just like, you know, he was everywhere, right? And it was kind of him that got me into it originally. And once I started, you know, kind of diving into bodybuilding and the history of bodybuilding a little bit more, Mike Menser was another one that was actually pretty inspiring. He has a pretty incredible physique. Gone a little too soon, but yeah, he was another big influence for me as well.
Now I got to ask you, Ronny was, big in kind of my era when I was in my late teens, early 20s. It was Ronny Coleman, Jay Cutler, kind of those classic battles, right? Now, when you first saw, because I mean, in my estimation, Ronny Coleman is the greatest Olympian, the greatest bodybuilder of all time. Okay. From 1998, when he won his first Olympia, to when he was done. I mean, just a freak of freaks, right? Now, when you first saw him, Dylan, like whether it was on a magazine cover, on YouTube, or whatever it was, I mean, what did you think? I mean, did you think like that's something like that's cool, or did you think like that's gross, or what were your first thoughts? Do you remember?
Well, I mean, just like mind blowing. You're just like, what the hell am I looking at? Right. Like you can't even wrap your head around it, like at that point, I mean, you've never seen anybody look like that ever. So you're just like, how is this even possible? Right. So he's a pretty, probably the most genetically gifted of all time, I would say. And, yeah, just definitely one of the best, one of the greatest, and just everything about him, he just had that funny personality, that quirky personality. And, yeah, he just seemed like a pretty humble guy. And, yeah, he was a guy that you were able to kind of just look at and say like, okay, like doesn't seem like he's an arrogant guy. Doesn't seem, and also to be able to like do what he did in the gym and on stage and everything. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah. Amen to that, man. All right. So, let us know, Dylan, at what age did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights kind of at that specific age?
For me, it was in high school. I'm trying to think. I believe it was the summer going into, I think, grade 10 or 11. So whatever that is, like 15, 16 years old, roughly. I was a pretty scrawny kid. I was pretty much the same height I am now, 6'2", 150 pounds soaking wet. I was skin and bone. So yeah, I was a pretty scrawny guy, and I played hockey, contact hockey and stuff too. So that was a big reason, just to kind of put on some more size for hockey, and also starting to get interested in bodybuilding as well. And it was something that I wanted to kind of pursue at that time. It was like something that I kind of just a little bit of interest in, I guess. And it was like, oh, I'll see where this goes. And it was like, once I started training and once I started getting into like a routine of actually, going to the gym and a diet and stuff like that, it's been 12, 13 years and I haven't stopped. So it's just one of those things that just clicked. And, yeah, it's something that'll be kind of regimented in me for forever, honestly.
Yeah. Excellent, man. All right. So, I want to kind of transition into your upbringing, your childhood a little bit. You're in Canada right now. I'm assuming you probably grew up in Canada. You mentioned hockey. So talk about like kind of like where at in Canada you grew up. Why don't you expound a little bit more on hockey, any other sports that you played? Talk about, family dynamics, anybody, maybe family members or coaches, teachers that maybe had a positive impact in your life. Just talk to us a little bit about that up to about high school. Once we get
Okay.
to high school, you can kind of stop, and then I'll follow up with some other questions for you.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm currently living in New Brunswick. I was actually born in Newfoundland, which is just east of New Brunswick. Born in Newfoundland, and we moved to New Brunswick, I believe I was 8. So that would have been like 2001. And yeah, growing up, I started playing hockey when I was 4, I believe, and kind of played hockey all the way up through, right up through till I was 18, 19, I guess. As far as other sports, I mean, I didn't really play anything organized growing up. I played golf and still do play golf as well. Just, recreationally with buddies and stuff. So that's a big thing here. I mean, golf season is pretty short lived, so you try and make the most of it. Our summers are short, so we try and make the most of that when we can. But yeah, hockey was a big thing for me growing up, and I don't really play a whole lot anymore. Still a little bit of pickup and stuff here and there, but yeah, bodybuilding kind of took the front seat there. But growing up, trying to think, moved here when I was 8, and we've been in New Brunswick ever since. Other sports, nothing really. As far as trying to think what else we can touch on there.
Let me interject and ask you this. You said you were 6'2" and like 150, 160 pounds, in high school. I mean, that's fairly tall, but pretty skinny. Did you ever get made fun of in terms of that? Or were you self-conscious because of your height and maybe how light you were, or not at all?
No, not really. Honestly, like, it wasn't really anything that I ever thought of, considered. Like, it was always, that was just kind of my build, tall and lanky. Yeah, no, it was never anything that I got made fun of for or anything like that. Yeah, looking back now, seeing like how my body's transformed compared to that, it's just like, holy crap, like, why were you so skinny? You know what I mean? It's like, you definitely didn't have to be, but it was just, I was one of those kids that just had a crazy metabolism. I could eat whatever I wanted. And it just didn't matter. You know what I mean? As far as you're super active, whether it was hockey, whether it was just, anything growing up, you're always outside playing, you're always, with friends doing stuff all the time. So you just go, right. And I never really thought anything of it, I guess, growing up. It was just kind of my build. And looking back now, it's kind of funny. It's like I've put on over 100 pounds in that amount of time. It's kind of funny to see the transformation, but yeah.
Very cool. Now, what about school? Was that something that you cared about? You didn't care about? Was it something that your parents really, forced you to get good grades? Where were you at with that, growing up?
I did well in school. It wasn't necessarily something that I cared for. School for me was more so for the social aspect of things. I had a lot of friends growing up, and still do. And I think the social part of school was huge. And I think it's probably the most important thing for all kids is the social aspect. The school system here, and I'm sure a lot of people can kind of relate, the school system here is not great. It's pretty, there's a lot of things that are pretty dated, a lot of things that need to be thrown out the window and tossed. And I found for me, it was really hard to kind of keep my attention in a lot of classes. There's a lot of classes that I was, just like math and stuff like that, that it was just second nature to me. It was very, very easy. So for that, like, I did get good grades without really having to put in a whole lot of effort, thankfully. Yeah, it was more just the social thing for me, and sports and stuff like that. That was what school was for me. The academic side of things was never enjoyable. It was never something that I really busted my ass for. Yeah, it wasn't something that I definitely didn't enjoy. We'll say that. It was more about friends and more about just, trying to enjoy your time as a kid growing up and stuff like that. And I found school wasn't it. Thank God for friends, and thank God for, you know, those kind of people in your life. But my parents, like, they wanted me to get good grades, and, you know, they didn't put an unreal amount of pressure on me or anything like that. It was, you know, my parents and I have a very good relationship, and it was always, you know, very, very understanding. And if grades were slipping here or there, you know, it was very easy for us to have a conversation and just say, hey, listen, like, what's happening here? What's going on here? And it's like, I hate that class, or, you know, this teacher and I don't get along, and I just can't sit in class, and it's just driving me nuts, and this and that. So it was, yeah, we had a very kind of open communication as far as that goes. And it, yeah, which definitely helps as well too. But yeah, looking back at it, like the academic side of things in school, it's really hard to sit here and say that it's really important, honestly. Like I'm one to think that, like, earlier on in school, you kind of learn the basics and you learn everything, like how to read and write and basic math and stuff like that. But, you know, unless you're becoming an English major, learning Shakespeare at 15 years old is irrelevant. Like, what the hell's the point, right? So there's a balance. There's certain things that I'm like, yeah, I'm all for it. That's super important. That's a life skill that you probably need to have. And then there's the side where it's like, what's the point? What's, like, why are we here? So very, very mixed feelings on that for sure.
I hear you. Well, that could be we could have a whole discussion for a couple hours about the educational system, Canada, United States, and just all the things. And then getting into college and things like that. That's a whole nother story. Cause I went to college and I'm like, I dropped thousands of dollars, and it's like, it's really done nothing for me. But we'll move on from that, because I can tell we're both probably pretty passionate about that. Now, I do want to ask you, did you have any, were there any coaches, were there any teachers, maybe it was your parents, did you have any adults when you were younger that really, as you look back on your life up to this point, Dylan, you feel like they really just had a profound impact on you, or maybe at a certain stage in your life, they just maybe spoke something into your life that really maybe helped you at that time?
Yeah, I mean, definitely my parents. Like, my parents have always been super supportive, and like I said, we've always had a very good relationship, you know, my entire life. So that relationship has been huge, my entire life. Like, super supportive, with everything that I've done. And, you know, they've always been there, whether it was hockey, whether it's now with bodybuilding, or whatever it is. They've got my back, and they're always, you know, trying to lend a hand or help out with any way they can. So that's been huge. Like, yeah, that's first and foremost for sure. As far as coaches go, like, I definitely had a few coaches growing up that were more impactful than others, and kind of left a little bit more of a mark than others. Not to the same degree by any means, but thinking, like, looking back and just kind of thinking quickly, like, yeah, there were definitely a few coaches that left a bit more of an impression. I'm thinking of one coach in particular who was a bit more of a hard ass, we'll say. And for some reason, just that approach and just that year, that team, whatever you want to say, like, it just worked. And I don't know, it just, looking back at it, it was like, at the time, you know, being 14, 15 years old, you're just like, man, this guy is like, he's a lot. Like, this is too much. Like, what's going on? Like, what? And looking back at it now, after, you know, years later, it's like, you know what? Like, I kind of see where he was coming from, and I can kind of respect, you know, approaching things from that angle, because you've got a bunch of teenage kids who don't want to listen to you anyway. So, he didn't take it too far by any means, but it's like, if you can kind of, like, strike some fear into these kids and make them respect you in a little bit of a different way, and not in an inappropriate way by any means, but it was like, it worked, you know, and it worked. And we had a very successful year that year. And it was like, hey, there's something to be said for that. And I think, surprisingly, like, that was the year that kind of left the bigger impact on me compared to other years playing hockey, where coaches had more of a laid back, you know, not really super into it, just kind of like, hey, we're here, here's practice, do your thing. Yeah, just not as intense, not as like, they just honestly just didn't really seem to care as much, I guess. Whereas this specific coach, although there were times that it was like, okay, this is crazy, but he cared, and it showed. Honestly, it showed. Like the team played their asses off every single day, and it showed. So it definitely had an impact on me, and I'm sure it had an impact on the rest of the team as well, and in a much different way compared to other coaches.
What do you feel like, Dylan? I mean, you say you started playing hockey at 4 years old. I'm sure there's a lot of life lessons within all those years of playing hockey, but do you feel like hockey really gave you something or a couple things in terms of maybe it was discipline, work ethic, whatever it might be? Are there a couple things that you feel like hockey really instilled in you that maybe you wouldn't have gained playing another sport, or if you didn't have hockey, you wouldn't have gained that maybe at that early of an age?
Definitely. Yeah. Like you had just touched on, like work ethic and stuff like that, for sure. I think a big one is, just being on a team. I think that's a big part of, you don't really think about it, but like being on a team like that, you're pretty much your entire childhood, from say 4 to 5 years old up until you're 17, 18, or however old. It's something that you just kind of get used to. And, year to year, there's always guys that are kind of like, your same age, and you're playing with the same guys as you grow up. But, there's also different players every year, different people every year. And every year is different. You need to adapt. You may have a different coach, you may have whatever. And I think learning at such a young age to be able to work as a team and communicate as a team, and, kind of come together in tough times, whatever that may be, like tough losses or, triumphant wins, whatever that may be, and sharing that with a group of guys that you became pretty close with over the course of a season. Those are pretty special moments, honestly. And a lot of those moments you kind of keep with you forever. Like there's stuff that you'll never forget. Right. But I've developed friendships, and, there's guys that I'm closer with now than ever that I met when I was 9, 10 years old playing hockey, and they're some of my best friends now. So I think that's probably the biggest thing I can take away from hockey. Definitely, as well as, the work ethic and the discipline as well. Looking back, yeah, there's probably ways and times that, the work ethic and discipline could have been a lot better, could have been taken more seriously, or what have you. But also part of growing up too, right? You're just like, I'm 14 years old. Screw it. I don't care. So definitely some life lessons there too. It's like, things can be definitely taken more seriously or whatever. But I think that's also a big part of the reason why now I'm able to stay so disciplined with bodybuilding. It's because I can kind of look back and just say, hey, you weren't as, say, disciplined, or the work ethic wasn't quite as there with hockey, and maybe the outcome could have been different, or maybe you could have played a little bit longer, or maybe you could have went a different route. And now it's like I'm at the age where I can understand that and realize that, and make that change and apply that to bodybuilding. And it's like no stone left unturned kind of thing. It's like, if you're putting in all your work with the gym, training, diet, everything, you're just like, everything's perfect, you're nailing everything, what else is there to do? You put in the work, and good things will come. Right.
For sure. Love that, man. I love the team aspect that you brought up. That's definitely something that is valuable for life, for sure.
Yeah,
So
it's something that, you can even take that into the workforce. Like, something that you've learned as a teenager playing on a team, that can be applied anywhere, right? You've got a project at work, you've got something going on, like you got to work with your colleagues, you've got to work with any like people just in everyday life. And there's moments to be selfish, but there's also moments to realize like, hey, I need help with this, or hey, let's work on this together, or, let's put two of our heads together, and, more hands make less work kind of thing.
100%, man. So before we kind of get into all things bodybuilding, and before kind of the training and the bodybuilding started to consume you, maybe when you were in high school, all of us, when we're in high school, we've got some sort of thought of what we want to do when we grow up, or, we have some sort of aspirations, dreams, most of us, or, maybe we don't have something hard in our mind, but we've got thoughts. I think most of us do when we're younger. What were some of those thoughts, or what were some of those dreams of what you wanted to do or be when you grew up, or career wise? Did you have anything in mind when you were in high school, or not so much?
When I was younger, not really. I mean, you have I'm talking like young. Yeah. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a police officer. You have all those, whatever. Yeah. And it is what it is. But, as I got a little bit older, so we had moved from Newfoundland to New Brunswick, because my dad, he got a job as an air traffic controller. So he got placed in New Brunswick. So that was our reason for moving here. So growing up and seeing him with that career, it was a great career, lots of time off, good pay, good benefits, good everything. And it's just like, you kind of get to see it firsthand, and you're like, geez, that's a pretty good gig. Like, that's able to work here. Like, there's work here. And, like I just said, lots of time off, good pay, good benefits. It's like working for a great company. It's like, yeah, that seems like a very viable option. It's like, I think I kind of want to pursue that. So that's what I do now. I'm an air traffic controller. So as I got a little bit older, I think it was when I graduated, actually. So I first applied, you had to be 18. So I first applied when I was 18. And at the time, they weren't putting on any courses. They weren't offering anything. So I just kind of got put in this waiting list. And at the time, I was finished high school, and I was like, I need to do something to kind of like, I know this is the path that I want to go down, but it's not available right now. So I kind of just need to wait and bide my time. So I enrolled in a 2-year course at the community college here, just a computer programming course. So I did that for 2 years, and landed a job at the lottery here, Atlantic Lottery. So I worked there in an IT position for 2 years roughly. And finally there was an offer put out for a course for air traffic control. So I left my position at the lottery and kind of took a chance on this course. And it was about just over 1.5 years of training and on the job training and stuff like that. And yeah, finished all that. And here we are. I've been a controller now for 7 years. So yeah.
Cool. Love that, man. Now, for those of us who don't know what, myself included, what is an air traffic controller? I mean, I'm assuming you work at like an airport or something, right? And
yeah, so there's, I guess, different levels, we'll say. So there are controllers that work at airports in the tower that kind of just work at, a couple miles around the airport. Myself, so I work at call it an area control center. So I think there's like 7 of them across Canada. So basically, like, each of those centers are responsible for a big chunk of airspace across Canada. And essentially the job is, you're sitting in front of a radar with a headset, and you're talking to all these planes, making sure that A, they don't hit, and B, you're kind of their point of contact for anything they need. They need to, change altitudes, go around weather, and then obviously like anything like emergency related or anything like that as well. So that's kind of the very short and sweet version of it. You are the pilot's point of contact for pretty much everything. So
very cool, man. That's definitely a career. And that's a fun part of doing the podcast is that, you get to hear about guys that are pursuing their bodybuilding and gals that are pursuing their bodybuilding dreams. But, behind the muscle, it's like, hey, but I'm a air traffic controller. I do construction, or so it's just kind of brings everybody that we see, on social media, Instagram specifically, like all the pictures and all the Instagram reality. The podcast kind of just helps us to relate to you guys and you girls, and just be like, man, like you guys are all normal, just like the rest of us, and it's pretty cool. So now, let's start transitioning into all things bodybuilding. Okay, so you started lifting weights in high school. When was the first time that you remember like seeing a bodybuilder, like in terms of a magazine, YouTube? Was that when you were a teenager? And what did you think when you first saw like a real quote unquote bodybuilder?
Yeah, it was probably right around that same time, like we had touched on earlier. And I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to think back. I had a good friend of mine who was kind of right into it as well at the same time I was. And he had kind of put me on to, the videos of Ronny Coleman in the gym, and the ones that everyone's seen, the yeah buddies and the big squats and all that stuff. Right. So that was that was kind of that first video that I remember watching that I was just like, what? Like, what am I seeing right now? So I think that was kind of the first time that I was just like, wow, like that's pretty crazy. Like that's pretty impressive. And at the time, you have no conception of like what he's actually doing. You have no way to relate. Like I had never been in the gym before. I don't know how much 800 pounds feels on your back. I have no idea. Right. So it's like, I know it's a lot of weight, but it's like, what does that actually feel like? What does that actually take? How much time and effort and, dedication does that take to get to that point? You have no clue. So now it's even more impressive because I've been doing it for, however long, 13 years, and it's still like unattainable. It's like, wow, like it's that impressive. Right. So, I think that was the first time that I remember just being like, that's crazy. And like, that's something that I would like to be able to do. But at the same time, you're just like, I don't think I'll ever be able to do that, but hey, we can try.
Very cool. So why don't you kind of start unpacking when you really got into bodybuilding, like competitively? When was your first competition? How did you do? Did you have a coach? Just kind of really start unfolding, unpacking that bodybuilding story of yours, Dylan, please.
Yeah. So I started working with Dana Baker, my coach, and him and I are great friends. Started working together about 3 years ago. And that was kind of the time that honestly, I was at the point in the gym where I was just like, I need more. Like I was just going to the gym to lift and didn't really have any goals in mind. It's just, you're always trying to just, get a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, not really working towards anything. And I just got to a point where I was like, you know what, like, why am I doing this without having a goal? Like, there's no point. Like, I need something to work towards. Right. So, I had some friends of mine in town that were doing some shows, doing some preps at that time as well. And I knew who Dana was, just kind of through social media and stuff like that. And a friend of mine had also hired him as a coach as well. So I had reached out to him and we started working together in the fall about 3 years ago, and started kind of working towards the first prep. And we were going to compete in, I think it was March of 2020. Does that make sense? And we had a couple shows lined up. We were going to do a show in Nova Scotia, and we were going to do the Atlantics here in New Brunswick as well. And that's when all the COVID stuff happened. So I think I was 10 days out from the first show when that one got canceled. And then a couple days later, the second one got canceled. So then we went into a full lockdown for, I don't even know, months and months. So that was kind of squashed. And then the following year, trying to think. So we had planned, both of us had actually planned to do Canadian Nationals in November, I believe, 2020 as well. And that one, so we had actually flown up to Toronto, and the night before, so I was going to do the President's Cup on the Friday, which was going to qualify me to do nationals on Saturday. And then Dana was already qualified, so he had planned to compete in nationals as well. And we were both there, and Thursday night, the email came out, all the shows were canceled, everything was done, and we were just kind of sitting there less than 24 hours out, just like, what the hell do we do now? Like, just crushed. Like, honestly, I don't have, oh, that's the dog. Just one moment.
Yeah, you're fine. You're good, man.
All right, sorry about that. Yeah, so we I remember we were sitting in our Airbnb, and we were just, having a meal, just kind of sitting around, and the email came through, and I read it, and I remember just looking at him, and I was like, dude. And he's like, what? And I told him, and we just sat there in silence for I don't know how long. Like, we were both just speechless. We had nothing to say, just crushed, honestly. Like, 2 times in a row, didn't know what to do. Everything in Toronto was closed, locked down. Like, we couldn't even go out to eat. We couldn't do anything. We were just kind of like sitting in the Airbnb, like twiddling our thumbs, like going a little bit crazy, right? So we made the most of it. We kind of we finished. We actually had a photo shoot planned for the day after the show on the Sunday, so we were actually still able to do that, thankfully. So we kind of ended the week on a good note, but we had to come home. We had to quarantine for 2 weeks. Yeah, there was a whole mess of things going on there. So that was fun. That was that was an experience on its own. So fast forward to a year later, once everything kind of settled down, I finally got to compete for my first time this past November. I did the Flex Lewis Canadian Classic, which was here in Moncton. And I competed. So it was my first show. So I did novice classic, novice bodybuilding, open classic, and open bodybuilding. So I won both my novice classes. I won my classic class and the overall. And then I came second in the open bodybuilding. So that was great. That was finally, able to rip that Band-Aid off, get on stage. And it was a fantastic feeling. And honestly, as tough as that whole couple years was, it felt right. I was able to get on stage in my hometown. Friends and family were able to be there. It just felt right. There were still a few restrictions, but we were actually able to have spectators, and it just felt like it was kind of meant to be that way. So able to have a little bit more closure on what had happened the previous year, which was nice. And then 5 weeks after that, I went and did the Toronto Super Show, the Pro Qualifier as well. And I did both. I did open classic and open bodybuilding. And I came second in the supers, and I came third in my classic class as well. So I did both of those. And in hindsight, I shouldn't have done 2 classes, just the way that they were like super back to back, like one, and then right after was the other one. So I remember I came out for bodybuilding first, and we had peaked like extremely well. And that look probably would have done better in classic if the times were reversed. So when I came out for classic, I was a lot fuller, and it didn't suit that class as well. So I think if I was fuller for bodybuilding and tighter for classic, it probably might have changed my placings a little bit. But I was still like, I had 0 expectations going into that show. I was super pleased with how everything went. We definitely learned a lot as far as the peak. Like we that being said, even though those shows didn't happen, we'd still gone through multiple peak weeks. We'd still gone through multiple preps. So we do have a ton of data, from 3 years of working together, going through a ton of preps. And that Toronto show was kind of like everything coming together, and everything that we had learned up to that point, finally putting it to the test. And it was like, oh, okay, it actually worked. This is good. Like this package that we brought was exactly how I wanted it to be, exactly how Dana wanted it to be. And we were super pleased. And yeah, that was a great way to kind of end off that show season. And yeah, we did a full off season, and now here we are going again, couple weeks for Pittsburgh.
So which competition qualified you to be able to compete at North Americans?
That Toronto show. That
Okay.
Yeah. So you need to do, I think it's, yeah, you need to do a pro qualifier and place, I don't know what the placings are, top, it might even be top 10 or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, that Toronto show was the one that qualified me.
Now, why did you and Dana decide to step into North Americans this year as opposed to maybe Canadian Nationals, or are you planning on maybe doing Canadian Nationals too? What were your thoughts going into choosing North Americans to compete first this year?
Well, I think the part of it was, well, okay, so back in, we had thought about doing Canadian, the same, the Super Show back in June. We had thought about doing that originally. And back in February, I actually fractured my wrist. So I had 2 hairline fractures here and here in my right wrist. So I was in a cast for 6 weeks, couldn't train anything upper body for 6 weeks. So that heavily delayed everything. That kind of just put everything on the back burner for the better part of 2 months. So once that cast came off, it was almost April. So by that point, it was like, you know, doing a show in June is out of the question. Like, it's not even in the realm of possibility. Like, I didn't even know if North Americans was going to be enough time, you know what I mean? Because I still wanted to kind of have a bit of an off season. I wanted to have a bit of a growth phase. And yeah, I just didn't know if I was going to have enough time. So giving myself the entire summer and competing now was kind of like the least amount of time that I was willing to give myself. So that was kind of the ultimate reason why we decided on Pittsburgh. That being said, yeah, Canadian Nationals is kind of we'll say my backup plan, I guess. Yeah, so that's another, I think, 5 weeks after Pittsburgh. So that one is definitely, Dana's doing that show as well. So I'll be there regardless, but hopefully not competing. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to take a step back and I want to talk about training just a little bit. Okay. How, if at all, has your training evolved over this time since you really decided, hey, like, okay, I'm just going to the gym. I don't really have a goal. I think I'm going to throw my hat into this bodybuilding thing because I need something more. Like, how has your training changed, evolved, if it has, over the last several years? What have you found, Dylan, to be kind of like the style or the philosophy that really has given you the best growth in terms of muscle recently?
I think the last prep and then leading into like this prep. So we'll say the last probably year and a half, I find my training really kind of took a turn. And I think it was really just trying to figure out, you know, getting bigger, getting stronger, and just trying to figure out like where my body was actually at as far as like strength, but also like finding exercises that agree with me and sticking to those exercises. Because before I would just like, I go to the gym and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do like a bench press. And now like I couldn't tell you the last time I went on a flat bench. It's like I would do incline only. So same thing with like barbell squats. It's like I don't barbell squat. It's just not a comfortable exercise for me. I'm over 6'2". It's just not a real great comfortable thing for me to do. So I incorporate, you know, Smith squats or leg press, or we have a belt squat machine, like anything, hack squat. So it's just finding, you know, different machines and different exercises that actually agree with you, for one, but also just the training intensity has changed so much. Like you don't realize until you start training with like someone like Dana, for example. Like we train together and you finally kind of realize like, you know, how hard you can actually push yourself and you have somebody with you that understands how you can push yourself, and they don't allow you to kind of do any less, you know what I mean? So like him and I, we have a very good understanding of how we both train. So we try and train together as much as we can. And like we push each other to the max. Like whether it's reps or weight, like it's, you know, we go to the gym with a purpose now. We have a set plan. We have numbers that we want to hit. We have exercises, like set exercises that we're going to do, and numbers and sets that we want to hit on those exercises. So it's, I think, a combination of a little bit of column A and column B. It's like finding exercises that agree with you and accomplish, you know, what you're trying to accomplish. So like if you're, for example, like doing flat bench is not really going to grow your chest, like the actual development and like shape of your chest. Whereas like doing something like incline makes a lot more sense. So it's like, if I go in and I do, you know, over the course of a year, X amount of sets of incline at X amount of weight versus doing that in flat bench, my outcome is going to be a hell of a lot different. Right. So little things like that. And then, like I said, just the actual training intensity, realizing how strong you actually are and how much load you're actually able to push. And just, yeah, like I find, like I said, the last year and a half, we've just been very, very in tune with our training, and it's shown. Like we've both progressed a lot in the last year and a half. And it's, yeah, the training intensity is a big thing to thank for that, for sure.
What's been your training split on this prep, or what's been the training split that you've been using most recently?
It's kind of a push-pull legs, but it's more of a like push A, push B, leg A, leg B kind of thing. So like we're doing like, we'll do like a push day with more of a chest focused, and then more of a shoulder focused, and then a leg day with more of a hamstring glute focused, and then one with a quad focused, and then a pull day as well. So that's kind of, honestly, like that's kind of the approach that I've had for the last couple years. It's changed a little bit here and there. And, you know, certain days you kind of just go in there and it might be completely different just depending on the day. But that tends to be what works best. And I find doing it that way, like I'm able to kind of get adequate rest for each muscle group and kind of rotate through, and taking about 2 rest days a week as well. So about 5 training days a week. And those are just kind of thrown in as needed, honestly. Like took one off yesterday, and it was just for the sole fact, it's like I just worked 4 or 5 days in a row. Fatigue is kind of setting in. It's like, listen, I just need to take the day off. My body's telling me I need it. So it's kind of just an ad hoc, like, yep, rest day tomorrow, and back at it full swing today. So
now, how much, let's talk about this prep specifically. Okay. Just, if you don't mind, I want to kind of get into the nitty gritty or the details. So, how many weeks out did you officially start prep for North Americans? And then I would like to know cardio, like how much cardio have you worked yourself up to, or has Dana have you doing? And how has that compared to other preps? Just kind of unpack this prep for us compared to some of the other preps that you've had recently, how it's gone overall. Because this is kind of like the bodybuilding nerd stuff, right? We kind of like to get into people's preps and like, okay, how does that compare to how I've done it and what have you? So just unpack this prep, please, if you don't mind, Dylan.
yeah, sure. I'd say it was about, like, we'll say 15 weeks, kind of unofficially, I guess. For the first like month there, like probably, yeah, 15 to 12 weeks, we're still like in a surplus. We were still pushing food pretty good. Cardio was still very, very low, like maybe 20 minutes a day. And that was really just to kind of push that off season as much as possible, where I didn't have that time in February, March, and leading into the first little bit of April. So that was the reason for that. Like we wanted to just try and like take as much out of that off season as we possibly could and push it as far as we possibly could. It was about the 12-week mark when we kind of flipped the switch a little bit and said, like, okay, you know, food's coming down a little bit, cardio's going up a little bit. And then from there, we just kind of like very, very gradually just kind of brought everything down. Cardio right now, cardio is it's 45 minutes a day with no cardio on leg days. And we're just like ultimately just trying to keep the fullness in the legs as best as we can. I'm finding, especially like in classic right now, like big legs are standing out a lot. And it's like, if you can show up with like peeled big legs, you're miles ahead already. So that's kind of what we're hoping for with that, is just to try and keep the fullness in the legs as best as possible and just not run flat. We did go up to an hour of cardio, probably at about the 5 to 4 week mark. We had like a week to 10 days there where I was doing about an hour a day. And then we dropped it back down to 45. The food side of things, food has been relatively high. I got to say, like even now I'm 16 days out. I think I'm still at 20. I've got it here, 2,900 calories. Yeah. So food is still pretty high. Lots of protein. Like it's like 330 some grams of protein, 335 or something like that. Fats are relatively low and carbs are kind of moderate around like 200 or so. So, and I don't think we're really planning on budging that much more. It might drop a little bit going forward, but we're just going to kind of play it day by day at this point and just see how things are going.
What's your goal? And I want you to be truthful. I don't want you to give me some politically correct answer. Okay. What's your goal going into North Americans here in 16 days when you step on stage?
First overall classic physique, honestly. Like I feel really good, I gotta say. Yeah, I feel really good. I'm confident. I feel like this prep has gone extremely well, knock on wood. Things just seem to be rolling. It's not, I'm not going to say it's been easy. It has not been easy, but in the grand scheme of things and comparing it to other preps, physically and mentally, it's been very, very manageable. And I'm extremely pleased with my physique, extremely pleased with how things are progressing. My weight is kind of just right there. I think I was like half a pound under my weight cap today. So I'm at weight, room to play, and that'll give me room to kind of fill out and stuff once we get to Pittsburgh. And yeah, like I've just been, putting in all the work as far as posing goes, presentation, everything like that. And I feel very, very confident in my physique. So I'm going in there with the goal of first overall in classic. I want to take it all.
I love it, man. That's what it's all about, dude. Just, bring your best package. That's what you can control. And then you have to kind of let the cards fall where they fall. But man, like just having that winner's mindset, that winner's mentality, like, let's do it. Now, in terms of, I know, I mean, you've been training for a while, but actually competing, like you're what they would say is a newbie, right? You've got, God willing, a lot of years ahead of you to be a competitive athlete. Do you allow yourself to kind of think into the future in terms of like what you would really like to accomplish as an IFBB pro, whether that's, classic or, in another division? Where would you like to see yourself in a few years in terms of an IFBB pro competitively?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, you can't say I haven't thought about it, and I'm pretty sure anyone who would be in this position hasn't not thought about it, kind of putting themselves in that position. It's like, what would you do, or how would you kind of go about doing things? I definitely, like, I probably would like to see myself, I'd like to get a show under my belt ASAP and then kind of get judges' feedback and stuff from there and kind of come up with a bit of a plan. But in a couple years, I mean, I can definitely see myself being very competitive in an IFBB pro stage for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I would love to see myself, placing top 3, top 5, even winning some of these shows and chasing that Olympia qualification. Honestly, like that's the ultimate goal, is to step on that stage and be with those top guys. And there's no other way than to just put yourself in that position. You need to just do the shows, show up and get your name out there. And I mean, yeah, there's no other way. You just need to do it, right? Like there's no holding back. If you have that pro card, like just go, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't change. It doesn't change from what I'm doing right now. You know, the prep is still the same. It's just the the end goal is a little bit different. That's the only thing. So I think I have the ability to be very competitive in the IFBB Pro leagues, and yeah, I'm looking forward to see what the next couple of years brings for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Now, do you first of all, the area of Canada that you're in currently, what's the gym atmosphere? What's the bodybuilding culture like? And then you know, like I've had a lot of the guys out of you know, the Toronto area on the podcast and stuff, you know, Pure Muscle. I know like Cody Amy is a classic physique IFBB Pro, really, really awesome guy. But I've had a lot of those guys on. So first of all, you know, kind of the gym culture, bodybuilding culture, like you have some good gyms in your area there in the area that you're at in Canada right now. And then do you connect with like Cody? Do you connect with some of the other classic physique IFBB Pro bodybuilders in Canada, or what does that look like for you specifically, Dylan?
Here, the gym atmosphere, it's not too bad. Like we do have a couple gyms here that are great, honestly. Canada, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the whole Good Life chain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have a ton of those here, and they are what they are. I mean, some of them are better than others. They have what you need, but it's not really that like bodybuilder atmosphere, but I'm not going to knock them either. Like they're great gyms. They're clean. Their equipment's great. And it's just a little bit of a different atmosphere. That's all it is. So I'm not going to knock them by any means. And then we do have a couple other private gyms that are great as well. One here just down the road from that's kind of my, we'll say, home gym, is great. Owner's fantastic. He's very supportive. And that's more of a, you know, it's a community gym, but it's also caters more to like the bodybuilding style as well. So that's nice. And then, yeah, there's a couple other smaller private gyms as well that are fine. As far as, yeah, connecting with kind of other bodybuilders and stuff like that, social media is fantastic for all that stuff. And we've made a few trips up to Burlington and been at Pure multiple times. So, you know, we know Cody and all those guys, and yeah, they're all great. Like you go up there, everybody's so welcoming, everybody's so friendly. And we always have such a great time when we go up there. And it's great to build those relationships, right? And that's a big part of what bodybuilding is too, is networking and building those relationships. So when we go to those events, you know, we were just out at the Vancouver Pro Show and training at West Coast, another fantastic gym, very like so welcoming. Everybody's so great out there as well. And it's so nice to see that like bodybuilding community, everybody supporting everyone and just being so friendly and welcoming. It's like anything you need, don't hesitate to ask kind of thing. And it's yeah, it's really nice to see and be around more. I guess when you go to those gyms, there's just so many more like-minded people, like competitive bodybuilders and pros and stuff like that. So you don't get that as much here. You know, there are people that are competing, and there are people that are pursuing shows and stuff like that, but it's just not to the same magnitude, I guess. Not as many competitors, not as many people. So it's pretty great to go out to those bigger cities and bigger gyms and get to network with those types of people. It's super enjoyable. You know, it's a ton of fun. We always leave those events and we're just like, man, wish we could stay a little bit longer, wish we didn't have to go home kind of thing. So it's yeah, it's great.
Now is Morgan McDonald, is he out in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, he's not too far. He's over in Newfoundland, so it's about an hour and a half flight. But yeah, no, I know Morgan well. He's been over a few times, and we've trained together a few times, and we stay in touch through social media and stuff like that. Morgan's a great guy. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to do here in the next little while with his competing and stuff as well. He's massive, so it's like we had kind of talked about earlier. It's like being as tall as Morgan and I are. Like you need to be as big as Morgan is to compete in an open pro division. So he looks fantastic. He's made some incredible improvements. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does in the coming months.
Yeah, he's been on the podcast, super cool guy. And I thought that he might be over in your neck of the woods, because I remember him kind of just saying like the bodybuilding culture wasn't that great in his area. And I thought it was more of the Eastern Canada area that he was in. That's why I kind of just asked you that. Now, in terms of just like maybe it could be current, it could be past, whatever. Are there some like Canadian bodybuilders, and it can be, you know, open bodybuilding 212, it can be classic physique, whatever. To me, you know, you get past men's physique, bodybuilding is bodybuilding, whether it's classic, open, 212, it's, you guys are all doing that. We're all doing the same thing. But anyways, are there any guys like Canadian athletes that you really admire, you really respect, you really look up to them in terms of, you know, maybe again, past guys, current guys, just however you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of like very successful Canadian guys out there right now. And I mean, obviously Chris, like Chris is from Halifax, which is like a couple hours from here. So, I mean, obviously he's one of the biggest faces of bodybuilding right now. And it's, especially in classic physique, it's hard to not admire that. I mean, the guy's absolutely killing it. So it's hard to not mention him first and foremost. And Ian as well. You know, Ian's a very, very, such a humble guy. Met Ian out in Vancouver. He's an incredible guy and such an impressive physique. And yeah, like being able to see him days out from Vancouver, it was just like, holy smokes. Like that's what an open Olympian looked like. Like, wow, like that was pretty crazy to see in person. So yeah, Chris and Ian first and foremost. And then, I mean, you can go, like we had talked about Cody, and there's a ton of guys from Pure, Quentin as well. And then you kind of go out to West Coast, like Dito Shack and Cody Drobot. Those guys are doing fantastic as well. Both competed there this past week and the week prior. And everybody, it's so great to see, like I said, the last couple of years have been pretty stagnant with bodybuilding and stuff, especially here in Canada. And it's great to see all these guys like coming back and just killing it. You know what I mean? These guys look so great and having a lot of success. And it's great to see Canadian names, you know, in the top fives and of these big pro shows. It's great.
Are there guys from Canada? Because like I know like you know, Ron Partlow is a pretty big name. And then, you know, like somebody that I looked up to when I was younger and all the magazines was Frank McGrath, which, you know, he never had like a successful competitive career, but like, dude, like I really truly believe like he impacted like a whole generation in terms of bodybuilding because of, you know, Animal Pack and just that whole culture and the magazines. Like, were there some guys, you know, from Canada specifically that, you know, that really maybe impacted you, or that you guys as a whole in Canada kind of like, maybe you hold them up as like, this is the standard of Canadian bodybuilding? Like, it's just kind of interesting to get that perspective from you.
Yeah. It's funny. Frank, for sure. Frank is one that I think of as well. Yeah, he was just kind of that freak of a guy. It was just like, you know, you'd see him all over the magazines, all over Animal this and Animal that. And it's just like one of those guys that you're just like, holy smokes, like, how does anyone look like that? Like, that doesn't even seem normal. Like the forearms, the veins, it's just like, holy crap. Like, it's just, you can't even wrap your head around that. And Ron, again, like Ron is a fantastic guy. Like we were just, like I said, out in West Coast, and Ron is so great. He, yeah, he's one of the owners of West Coast there, and he just open arm, like, come on in, anything you need. And he's such a great guy. And he's been, oh, excuse me, he's been sorry, lost my train of thought there. Actually, the dog is trying to get in. 1 sec.
Nope, you're good. You're good, man.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
Yeah, Ron, we met Ron a few times. He was in Toronto there, and then again at West Coast. And yeah, so many good things to say about Ron. He's just been so, he was so welcoming out West and just so friendly and supportive and everything like that with myself and with Dana as well, with Mutant and everything too. Yeah, other than, I'm trying to think of like growing up, some Canadian guys. I'm trying to think. any other guys that I can come to mind. It's funny, how like social media and everything has changed all of that, right? Like it used to be the supplements and the magazines and this and that, and now it's just like Instagram, YouTube, and you see so many guys that you would never have even heard of before because of Instagram or social media. And yeah, there's a lot of incredible physiques out there, and it's great. It's a great way, and Instagram is a great platform to be able to get your name out there and to be able to see some of these competitors and where they're from and what they're doing, and it brings everyone together too, like a little bit more camaraderie, and you get to these shows and who these guys are, to an extent. But I know for myself, like when I did Toronto last year, you show up backstage and you're like, huh, I know that guy. We've talked on Instagram before. We've talked before. It's great. You're not walking into a room full of strangers. And I think that goes a long way as far as just like getting the nerves out and kind of just being a little more comfortable backstage and that. So.
Yes, couldn't agree more. We're gonna start wrapping up our conversation, Dylan. I want to kind of ask you, in terms of maybe just some things that you've learned, just through your bodybuilding experiences up to this point. Is there anything that you can maybe share with us that you're like, hey man, I kind of wish I would have known this a year ago, or I wish maybe I would have known this when I first started bodybuilding or lifting or what have you? Like, is there anything that you can kind of give us or enlighten us in terms of your bodybuilding experiences up to this point? Again, that maybe now that you wish you would have known in the past, just so that we can maybe glean from you and maybe learn learn a little bit of something from your bodybuilding journey up to this point.
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, and I've said this to a ton of people, I wish I hired a coach years ago. I hadn't hired a coach until I started working with Dana, and I wish I hired one 10 years ago, honestly. And to kind of segue out of that as well, it's like, nobody knows everything, right? So even if you do have a coach, like they have a coach and they're learning from another person and they're learning from another person. So it's like, it's this huge web of knowledge that, you can kind of pull information from a little bit of column A, column B, this coach, that person. And it's like, you need to kind of be in the headspace of you're never going to know everything and you're always going to be learning. So you need to be willing to be open to that. You need to be like a sponge, honestly. Like, find people that you can relate with, find people that you can have conversations with, and just pick their brains and just learn as much as you possibly can. And like, I've learned more in the last 2.5 years working with Dana and connections through him, and then competing and stuff like that, and just networking and meeting new people. I've learned more in the last 2 years than I learned in the last 12, right? And not to say that I was not open to learning, but I just didn't really have the avenue to, like, I didn't know who to ask, or I didn't know who to talk to. And I didn't really have that kind of support around here. I guess there weren't really a ton of people that I could have talked to or that I could have asked. And I was learning everything that I could from the internet, reading on forums and watching YouTube videos and stuff like that, which most people do. But to take it a step further, if you are surrounded by people that are having success in bodybuilding and that's something that you want to do, pick their brains, hire a coach. There's so many things out there. Take a course, like do like personal training courses, nutrition courses, learn as much as you can on your own as well, to have a base knowledge. And then the things that you lack in knowledge, there's somebody out there that knows more than you. So find it and learn. There's never going to be a time that you're going to know everything, and you're never going to stop learning. So whether that's with training, whether that's with something nutrition related, there's always information out there. And that would be the biggest thing I would say, is just to find it, and just never really just be satisfied with what and never be satisfied with kind of where you're at, because there's always something out there that can improve, whether it's your physique, your diet, whatever. you know, there's information out there, or there's somebody out there that has the information. And yeah.
That's excellent, man. That's well put. I definitely receive that. Do you have a go-to YouTube channel, or a couple go-to YouTube channels that you when you get on YouTube, you're like, I'm going to go watch this person train, or I'm going to this YouTube channel? What do you got for us?
I mean, I watch Chris quite a bit, and Ian. Those are two channels that I probably watch the most. Aside from that, I'm just going to open up my YouTube here because
I love it. I wish Ian
drawing
would
a bit of a blank.
I
wish Ian would put out
Ian would do more content, right?
Yeah, I know. It's great when he does. And like when we were out in West Coast, he was filming a bunch of it. He was putting out.
It was awesome. I know. It was awesome.
Video every day, right? So it was great to.
I think he's kind of one of those Dorian Yates hermit kind of bodybuilders, which I fully respect that. I kind of like that a little bit better than all the camera stuff, but you know, we're in a different generation. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then like, obviously, you know, the like Fuad's podcast and stuff like that. Like I watch that all the time. And for me, it's like, I find I'm not necessarily one to like religiously watch YouTube videos. Like, if someone puts out a video, I'm not like, you know, notification, oh, I got to go watch that right now. It's kind of one of those things, like if I'm doing cardio or whatever, I'll open up YouTube and it's like, oh, someone so-and-so has a new video that was out a couple days ago. I'll turn it on and watch it, and kind of go through it like that. And it's one of those things that, yeah, it's also like relevant information too. Like if it's something that like, oh wow, like this is actually something that I'd like to know more about or learn more about, then it might be someone I've never even heard of. You know what I mean? To talk, like even like someone like Squat University or something like that, like very, very informative videos. And it's like, will I watch all of their videos? Absolutely not. But if it's something that's specifically related to like an issue that I might be having, absolutely. Yeah, there it is. And I'll watch it, and maybe that'll lead you in the rabbit hole of 3 or 4 more videos. And we all know what that's like.
Yeah. Well, Dylan, dude, you're 16 days out. I've had a lot of guys on, you know, over the length of this podcast, in prep, deep into prep. And some of them, they can bring it, even though they're deep into prep. Some guys are, you know, they're zombie. Like, you did a great job, man. I want to really thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to chop it up with myself and all the Behind the Muscle podcast subscribers and listeners. You really, there's definitely some things, if people are open to learning, which I know everybody is, or most people are that are a part of this podcast, they're definitely going to glean some awesome information from you. So I want to say thank you for coming on. I want to say good luck here in 16 days, man, as you pursue that IFBB Pro Card and step into your competitive future. Before I do a quick outro, I want to give you the opportunity to share any final thoughts, any final words that you might have, any shout outs that you have. Why don't you please give us your Instagram and anything else that you want to leave us with? The platform is yours, and then I'll close this out with a very quick outro. Okay.
All right, man. Well, first of all, I appreciate your time and allowing the platform and everything to kind of speak on everything that we talked about for first and foremost. Yeah, it was great. I haven't really done anything like this before, so it's been fun. Yeah, really enjoyable. And the topics and stuff were great, very relatable. And yeah, it's one of those podcasts that, like you said, getting to learn about bodybuilders and stuff outside of bodybuilding and realize like, hey, like that person actually has a regular job and has a life and isn't just, you know, in the gym 24/7. It's pretty eye-opening for some people. So thank you for that as well. And yeah, Instagram is just my name at Dylan Bursey, and YouTube as well, Dylan Bursey. So putting out some videos, prep series type stuff leading into Pittsburgh these next couple of weeks. As far as shout outs, not really, not a whole lot. Yeah, you had Dana on earlier, so he would be the first and foremost person that him and I have been working together now, like you said, 3 years. So we're rolling into Pittsburgh here in a couple weeks, and he'll be there with me. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, we've been we've been pretty good at making it to each other's shows and kind of supporting each other that way. So that's been a lot of fun. And aside from that, man, just thank you for having me, and appreciate the time. And like I said, appreciate the platform and the podcast, and look forward to speaking some more in the future.
You know what, man? First of all, you're welcome. If you get that pro card at North Americans, I will be reaching out to you. We'll get you back on if you're down to come on, man, and we'll just kind of do a quick recap and let you kind of just spill your feelings, your emotions, and all the good things that come from getting that pro card. Is that cool with you, Dylan?
Yeah, for sure. I'd be happy to, for sure.
Excellent. All right. All of you who are tuning in to another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. Per the usual, if it weren't for all of you, the podcast would not exist. I am just so thankful. I'm so grateful for all of you. I really value all of you as you subscribe to the YouTube channel, as you follow us on Instagram, as you guys just continue to comment on YouTube and just send a lot of positivity towards myself and all of the guests that are on the podcast. I greatly appreciate all of you. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's really important because I release all these episodes first on YouTube, and then I'll distribute them to iTunes, Castbox, and some of the other major podcast platforms. So if you want to stay current on all the Behind the Muscle podcast episodes, make sure you are subscribed on YouTube. And something that I did just kind of mention, but I also just want to, repeat myself. I've had some people saying they wish the podcast was somewhere else besides YouTube, and the podcast is available on some of the other major podcast platforms. Like I just said, it's on iTunes, it's out on Castbox. Just search it, and for the most part, you will find Behind the Muscle podcast outside of YouTube. One other quick favor as we wrap up this conversation with Dylan, please take this episode with Dylan, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Dylan, tag Behind the Muscle. Go ahead and tag Dana Baker, who is Dylan's coach as well. Dana, I just had him on actually earlier today. His episode will be released on Wednesday. So you can scroll back. Dylan's will be released a little bit later. So you can scroll back and listen to Dana Baker's episode as well if you'd like. Then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.